There is not an Ohio State press conference scheduled today, and the truth is there's really only one question that we could dive into, but it's Talking Tuesday no matter what on the podcast daily. That is Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. And so things got a little bit wonky. We just did snap judgments on Sunday. It was right about the time that the news was breaking for Jim Knowles. Maybe if we waited 30 more minutes, that show could have been different. Although we did talk about he wasn't there and what that probably meant. And then we recorded Monday's daily, and it was like I had to say, well, maybe someone else could be the defensive coordinator. I don't know. But so now this is the first time that you and I have talked about the fact that Jim Knowles is heading to Penn State. You also talked about it on Kings of the North on Monday if you missed it with Doug Maurice, but it's Talking Tuesday. You and I have to do it. We have to talk about it.
We do. Yeah, not the first time breaking news was not our friend on Snap Judgments or the podcast daily. Probably won't be the last time either. I don't know, man. This is all kind of strange. Because part of me is just like, Jim Knowles was here for 3 years. They both got what they wanted out of it. They're both going their separate ways. And like, can it just be that? But I realize it's not. That's not the case. He's going to a interconference rival of sorts. Penn State's not really Ohio State's rival. Penn State fancies
they're unrivaled, baby. Rival. They are unrivaled.
They are unrivaled. Familiar conference foe probably is a better way to say it. So it's odd. I understand that. It's a situation where I think Ohio State could end up being fine if just as long as it doesn't, as long as Ryan Day makes the right decision here to replace Jim Knowles. But there are a lot of layers to this one, so I guess I'll let you guide us and tell me where you'd like to start.
So you're saying you're not of the mindset that you should, smile because it happened, not cry because it's over. I don't know. Maybe is that backwards? Did I get it right? Yeah, that's how it goes. You're just supposed to say it in different. Don't cry because it's over. Smile. I think that it's fine to have mixed emotions about this. That's where my analysis is mixed, because I say all the time, this is not new. I believe that fresh blood on a coaching staff is good. And I don't know if I'm going to have to reevaluate that with Ryan Day in 2 years' time, because I say a lot that 7-8 years is about the shelf life for people to be in one spot before they need a new challenge, before they need to surround themselves with different people and new challenges. And coordinators, I think, tend to have a little bit shorter shelf life than that. I don't know that I've ever pinned down an exact amount of time for that, but if people aren't trying to hire your assistants or your coordinators after 2, 3, or 4 years, there might be a reason for that. Continuity is great. Familiarity is great. Recruiting to a scheme, all those things are valuable, and you want that. And you hope that they get opportunities to go spread their wings and be head coaches somewhere. I think the part that makes it the mixed bag here for Jim Knowles is that the absolute best thing that you could say about it is that it's a lateral move. And I personally feel like going to Penn State and working for James Franklin is a step down. Now, it's not financially, and that's where we get into all the different shades of gray. Ohio State competes head-to-head with Penn State. They're not going to be on the schedule permanently because Penn State is unrivaled, and they did not protect this as, even though it's one of the most competitive, entertaining, lucrative series in the Big Ten. But they're going to compete for recruits. They're going to compete in the college football playoff. They're competing for Big Ten championships head-to-head against each other. And the fact that Jim Knowles would switch sides on that, I can understand why that would be bittersweet and painful. I think if you look at the tenure, the 3 years, Jim Knowles did give Ohio State every single thing that it could have asked for. He immediately improved the defense. He contributed significantly to a national championship in that third year. And then he moved on. And I think if he had done that pretty much anywhere else, you just say, well, that's great. And you understand, you shake hands and you part ways. Mm-hmm. The only part that makes it more difficult is that it's Penn State.
Right. Yeah. If we're Penn State or Michigan, it would just be a whole other thing. Well, thankfully, we're not dealing with that particular can of worms.
Although that did happen 9 months ago.
Yeah, no doubt. So I do think there was. So I guess I'm of the mind. I don't know that I would expect any coordinator at a program like Ohio State to be around for anything more than 3 years feels like bonus territory to me. That being said, Jim Knowles hiring felt a little different because there was seemingly no ambition to go be a head coach, even though his name did come up a couple times after in off seasons for head coaching jobs. So like if that's the case, it was like, well, if things are going well, then where are you going to go? This felt like maybe, not that I think Jim Knowles is anywhere near retiring, but maybe it's a job he'd hold on to for quite a while. So that part of it's a little hard to process. And then if it's a not merely a Big Ten opponent, but like one that is at the top of the league that you're going to be butting heads with, probably more often than not, to try to get to Indianapolis and then try to get the best playoff positioning possible, and then go win a national championship. So that's odd too. I think it is. I wouldn't. I guess from like monetarily, it's not a lateral move, but job status, I think it's a step down. Right? Ohio State just won a national title, and Penn State is clawing to get near the level that Ohio State has operated on for decades. So he's leaving a bona fide year in year out championship contender for a team that is striving to be that, and that's fine. Maybe you want the personal challenge if you're Jim Knowles now that you've gotten to the mountaintop at Ohio State. I certainly wouldn't fault anybody necessarily for wanting to do that. It's just to do it like there, like you couldn't do it anywhere else. Like even like you could, if you were going to Oklahoma, but like, man, it's weird that he's leaving, but I think this would have died down rather quickly. Or wherever.
Notre Dame. I mean,
Notre Dame. Yeah, like quite literally anywhere other than Penn State or Michigan. I think, and not to say that they're the same, because they're not. But I think we understand why I say that. So that makes it a little probably harder to swallow for Ohio State fans, or like for me, is a little more difficult to quite wrap my head around. I guess like with the way that Jim Knowles' tenure went here, where there was clearly some push and pull about what exactly this defense should look like. And at times it felt like, I think friction is not too strong of a word. They figured it out right in the second half of the season and got a national championship because of that. But like, I could certainly understand why that would leave people feeling some type of way. And if you got an opportunity to just go restart elsewhere with the championship ring and $3 million in your pocket, like, okay, I guess that makes sense. It's just it's not the typical path you see happen for teams that it's not uncommon to see teams that win championships have people come after their coordinators. It's just less common for them to make a move like the one that Jim Knowles just made.
Yeah. I kind of want people to stop calling it 3.1 million a year. Not you specifically, like anybody, because they're not subtracting the buyout. And I think that's the part, the reporting,
which is what, which is how much?
1.3 million. So, that has to be paid, whether Penn State's paying that directly or Jim Knowles is taking it out of his paycheck. Like, it's got to go to Ohio State. And so I think it's semantics, and it really doesn't matter. Jim Knowles wanted to be the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country, and 4 different schools were willing to make that happen. It's when people are out there and arguing, like, did Ohio State do enough? What was the offer from Oklahoma? Where was it for Notre Dame? Like, it doesn't really, in the end, make any difference. But Ohio State was in the same ballpark because it didn't have to pay a buyout to anybody. Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Penn State were all going to have to do that. Anyway, that doesn't really make any difference here or there. I don't think anybody even cares to hear us continue to relitigate what happened with Jim Knowles at the finish line. We've done that a couple times already. We did that at Roosters on Monday. You and Doug did that on Kings. I think everyone just wants to know now what is next for Ohio State and where they're going to go. And I don't have an extensive list. I think anyone could come up with hot boards and people who have ties to Ohio State or people that Ryan Day has talked to. Outside of Jim Leonard and the potential for Matt Guerrieri or Tim Walton, I don't have any other knowledge of people Ohio State has contacted for that. And when you start with Jim Leonard, I think you and I would probably both see some things that make sense for Ohio State. It works for, but he pulled out a little bit from my understanding of the Notre Dame conversation because he doesn't want to recruit. So if that means that the one candidate outside of Ohio State that I know there was communication with, and he doesn't want to go back to college, well, I'm not sure where else Ohio State turns other than the internal candidates, of which a partnership of Matt Guerrieri and Tim Walton would also have pros, may also have cons. So I don't know what your early thinking is here for where Ohio State should turn to, other than maybe spitballing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just whatever Ryan Day deems is like, or who Ryan Day, I guess, deems is the best man or men for the job. I could not that it matters what I think, but like I could be comfortable with a co-DC situation. I could be comfortable with a head coach of the defense situation. I do think maybe like elevating someone like McArary to a similar status of Jim Knowles would be a little hard. Just given some of the dynamics on the defensive coaching staff. So maybe if that were to be the case, because Ryan Day pretty clearly likes McArary, he gave him a rather strong endorsement at the national championship celebration, and I don't think that was a random thing that he chose to do there. So, but is like the best way to massage that to, as you alluded to, like do a co situation with Tim Walton and McArary, where like maybe McArary is the one calling the plays. It would feel a little like Jeff Hafley and Greg Madison to an extent. This is two guys who have been at Ohio State, not two guys you're bringing in from the outside, but like a more veteran presence to offer guidance probably isn't the right word, but just like someone else is like a little bit of a co-pilot there as you're trying to do that with a younger guy. But McArary is not inexperienced either. Like he's young, but he's not inexperienced. He's called plays for 4+ seasons in college football, and I think at times has actually done it pretty well. And the scheme continuity, I'm just imagining the scheme continuity being pretty important for Ryan Day as he processes all of this, because I guess on one hand you can say like, well, they're losing a bunch of defensive starters, they're only returning like three or four, depending on how you characterize Jermaine Matthews. Maybe that's an opportunity to just bring in whoever you think the best man is, and whatever that scheme is, like he runs that scheme. Like that's good, but I think maybe you stand a better chance of getting the most out of this new look defense by maintaining some scheme continuity too. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what ends up maybe rolling the day for Ryan Day as he tries to figure that out. I would be also in favor of, if you're going to spend somewhere in the area of $3 million to keep Jim Knowles around, then why can't that just be your pool to go hire whoever the next best defensive coordinator in college football is? If you think Phil Parker at Iowa is worth that, or whatever Danton Lynn just got from USC, like go outbid USC and pay the buyout to get him here. Like I don't know the contractual details there to know that what exactly the ask there would be, or even if there's even interest. I'm just throwing out names of guys who I think do the job well. Ryan Day has gone a few different paths when he's had to do stuff like this. Like in some ways, I feel like Guerrero might be like a hybrid of like the familiar with the like on the rise kind of guy. Like a Hafley was like a, who is this person? Oh, he's pretty good. And like Kerry Combs is like, well, I know who that guy is. At least I have no idea if he can do the job, but at least I know who he is. Like that was a disaster. So I think there's a blend with McArary where it's like not a lot of people know who McArary is, but he has done the job before. And I don't know that Ryan Day would call someone a rising star just to pump up their ego, because all he's doing is driving up the price tag, I guess, to keep that person around. So I guess I'm rambling a bit, but it's a long way of me saying like while admitting that like the internal promotion of like McArary and maybe Tim Walton in a co-DC role is not the splashiest thing in the world, maybe it's just the most sensible thing to do right now, and I could definitely see a way that it would work.
Yeah, and I think we got a number of questions about this, like Matt Guerrero and Ryan Day's track record with promotions and interior hires. Like for them, it's also a mixed bag. I think you can look through and say, Keenan Bailey, big success. Going back to the Kerry Combs, well, maybe not so much. The end of the Corey Dennis era, probably not great at quarterback. Like we can go. We don't need to go through that. I think there was a time pre-Jim Knowles where I think the biggest single question that I personally had about Ryan Day's tenure in this being a first-time head coach was his success in hiring anybody, outside, inside. And there was also mixed results with that. Jeff Hafley and Greg Madison, thumbs up. Yep. Again, the Matt Barnes, Kerry Combs combo, thumbs down. Matt Guerrero, why him? You said this. We were looking back through and double checking on Sunday, like 5 years of defensive play calling experience. That's a real pro. I had some other folks point out to me that a different Power Four school with a coordinator opening tried to hire him, thought they were going to hire him earlier in January. So other schools, I think, agree with the assessment that Matt Guerrero, his track record warrants some of the praise that Ryan Day has given him. That doesn't mean to me that absolutely has to be the path that they go. I don't know that I have a definitive answer. I think Jim Leonard stands out as the best candidate, and if you're going to throw around $2+ million or all the way up to three, I think he would be the guy that says to me that's probably worth it. And you could pair him with Guerreri or Walton and get, I think, some really promising results out of that. The interesting thing about both Jim Knowles' contract offers skyrocketing and Ohio State now needing to replace him at coordinators, that like we already know who is viewed as the best candidates in college football, because Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and Penn State, we're all trying to hire them all already. So we already have a working list.
No, it is weird that especially like Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State are all kind of having this weird standoff. Because even like as we're having this conversation, like it's not finalized as far as I know, but like Notre Dame's like trying to hire Chris Ash. It's like, could you like separate just a little bit? Like,
and Chris Ash wanted to be involved the last time when Ohio State wound up with Jim Knowles.
It's all incestuous business. I get it. Part of the Guerreri thing, and maybe this is a dumb comparison to make, but I wonder if there's any part of it too that like, because it's not, people would never and haven't, I think historically, like batted an eye like, oh, we need a new offensive coordinator. Let's just make it the QB coach because he has a relationship with the most important player on our team. Matt Guerreri's Caleb Downs' position coach. Like, and he is going to be the quarterback of that defense next year. And so like, I don't know, maybe it's the positions are so different and the dynamics are different that it's not worth making that comparison. And I don't think that should be like the only reason you make a decision, but maybe that could be a feather in Matt Guerreri's cap too, because it does seem like Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs both quite like the coaching they got from him quite a bit. And I think some of the stuff you saw coverage wise from Ohio State in the second half of the season had some of Matt Guerreri's fingerprints on it. Like it's all within the Knowles framework, but you know, someone had to teach those guys how to do that stuff, and it was Guerreri and Tim Walton. And I do think that's where the defense like started to unlock some things, just with how they were changing up their coverages on the back end. So there are just boxes there that I think Matt Guerreri does check as a admittedly not like super flashy kind of hire, if that's where Ohio State were to go, that I think are just worth mentioning. I'm not saying that like I definitely think he needs to be the guy. If you said you can have Jim Leonard or Matt Guerreri, like give me Jim Leonard. If you're gonna say that, like I'll give me Phil Parker, give me whoever, top 5 defensive coordinators in college football, I'll probably take it, any of those guys. I just don't know that I wouldn't have like my alert antennas up quite as high on a Matt Guerreri promotion as I did, or at least I'm applying in hindsight, to like Parker Fleming or Corey Dennis, like that kind of stuff. I think it's an entirely different conversation. I do find Guerreri fits him to be far more qualified for the position if he gets it than some of the other internal promotions that Ryan Day's made.
How much does the track record of co-coordinators weigh into your thinking there? Because you brought up Jeff Hafley and Greg Madison, which is like, okay, they found a way that worked. Byrne brought it up on Monday, and I thought he was going to talk about Matt Barnes and Kerry Combs, which did not work. And instead, he went all the way back to 15 and on the other side of the football with Ed Warner and Tim Beck. And it's like, you can find examples where co-coordinator situations work out, and teams might have a more clearly defined pecking order of who's calling plays and whose responsibility is what. And sometimes it's purely about titles and salary. And, there isn't going to be an overlap or two people fighting over the credit or being the last voice on the headset. So I don't know what I should take from that, other than most of my experiences watching teams try and actually execute co-coordinator duties and responsibilities. My thinking is that it tends to go poorly.
Well, I think I'm trying to remember, because Chris Ash and Luke Fickell were co-DCs, right?
Yeah.
So like that worked pretty well. I don't know. The Combs Barnes didn't work, although that never really felt like a co-situation until it had to be. I wonder if the fact that it was a combination of things. One, like I think Tim Beck and Ed Warner both not being the right guy to be in that role with an offensive-minded head coach and Urban Meyer, who was always going to be part of that conversation, I think further complicating things. Maybe the fact that Ryan Day is not a defensive leaning head coach might help you avoid some of that, because I think there are more success stories with co-DCs at Ohio State than there are horror stories. So I think maybe as long as it's a situation that's opposite the side of the ball that is the specialty of the head coach, it might have a better chance of working than otherwise. But maybe that's just me applying specific Ohio State examples to a more general thought that's not actually true.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think that this is another fascinating moment. I can't call it. It's not a turning point. It's not a make or break moment. Ryan Day won a national championship 8 days ago. It's just this is what comes with the job. You won a championship, and now you have to turn around and make another critically important hire for the future. And the wheels don't ever stop at Ohio State. I think it is. Part of me thinks that it's crazy that we're having this conversation. It's like, hey, just relax. You won a national championship. If it takes a couple of weeks to find a defensive coordinator, so be it. And the other half is like, well, you're trying to go back to back. You're trying to repeat. How the hell are you going to replace Jim Knowles? I think, again, like all those things, both of those things can be true. All these things can be true. It's not a black and white situation. And this is one of the most important jobs in college football, like, period. Not just being the head coach, but then being the coordinators at Ohio State. That's why they're compensated at the level that Jim Knowles was and Chip Kelly is. And, that's a whole nother conversation that we have to have because, and not today, unless somebody actually offers him a job at the NFL level, then he's recruiting and representing the Block O right now. So, if we have to have that conversation, we will. But I think back to a year ago, Ryan Day was faced with those questions. 3 years ago, he was faced. Last year it was on offense. 3 years ago it was on defense. He went out. He took big swings with Marcus Freeman and Jim Knowles. Things worked out great for everybody involved in that. Primarily Ryan Day and Jim Knowles in Ohio State. And last year he faced a larger challenge in the offensive coordinator role. Landed Bill O'Brien, and then lost him immediately after that, and then got Chip Kelly. So it's like he's on a little bit of a heater in terms of some of these hires. Those are the highest profile ones, but even, the move to promote James Laurinaitis last year, that's another internal situation. Maybe that was more of a no-brainer to many people, but they gave it serious thought and weighed other candidates outside. But, if that was the knock on Ryan Day early in his tenure, that it was all up and down and all over the map with the hires, I think he's probably answered this in a more definitive way, that he knows what he's looking for and can seal some of those deals.
I mean, they had a great staff, I think, this past season. Even some of the guys that got some heat. I'm thinking most specifically like Justin Fry did an excellent job when Ohio State really needed him to with those injuries, and Larry Johnson got another level out of that defensive line too, right? So like there was always going to be some learning on the job with Ryan Day when he got the Ohio State job 6 years ago. And I think part of that was figuring out how to build a staff, especially when you're like a young coach who doesn't have the expansive Rolodex of maybe some other more established head coaches. That's continued to grow. I think Ryan Day's continued to learn lessons along the way. He did a tremendous job the last 2 times he had to hire a coordinator. So I not that I say like you should just give him the benefit of the doubt because he's done it 2 times in a row, but I do think there's been progress there, to your point. So, will everyone be super ecstatic if it's an internal promotion? Probably not, because you just lost the guy that I think a lot of people perceive to be the best defensive coordinator in college football right now to a team that's in your conference. But when you have a national championship ring, you can also maybe be able to take those risks too, if it's viewed as such. So I'd be lying if I said I had like a tremendous feel for what's going to happen. I guess if I had to pick an outcome, I would probably say like McElravy is going to get elevated, because I had to have a hard time seeing Jim Leonard leave the NFL. And then I don't know if Ryan Day is going to go poach somebody. So it's interesting. I think the Kelly thing would be far more fascinating if that goes down. Because of all the personal connections there and the journey Ryan Day has gone on to like give that up, and then like he has to go through it again in one off season. But I don't know. I just like someday Ohio State was going to have to find a replacement for Jim Knowles. He wasn't going to coach here for forever. I guess I thought he'd be here longer than he was, but the 3-year run was pretty good, and they got a national championship out of it. And Ohio State, isn't in a position where it has a irreplaceable hole in its coaching staff. Ryan Day just has to make a good hire, and that's what's asked of him. That's why he makes what he makes.
Yeah, and it's very different to be having these conversations now than it was 13 months ago when you're looking at the staff, and it's like, well, he's doing this and that better, but well, there's a pretty glaring hole on the resume. Well, he addressed that one. So
yeah,
a national championship does buy you cachet. Guess what? It also allows you to have a pretty enticing sales pitch to pretty much any defensive coordinator who is on the market, except apparently Jim Knowles, who did not want to stick around in that role moving forward. That was his decision. And now Ryan Day faces one to replace him. How's he going to do it? We'll figure it out. We're going to keep trying to report on that, and we'll analyze it the best we can as everything materializes. Ryan Day had to go, to the Fallon show on Monday. So, I'm sure he still made a few calls while he was handling that. But
Martha Stewart's going to be the new defensive coordinator.
Well, I don't know. She keeps a tidy house, so
she knows ball.
That's important. Absolutely. Yeah. We'll figure out if she knows as much ball as Jim Knowles. I bet not. There might be other candidates who are more intriguing than that. We'll find out who they are. We'll talk about them when the time comes. But this has been Talking Tuesday about one thing in particular, not many things that are on our mind. It's just the defensive coordinator at Ohio State. Be back on Wednesday. Maybe some post-playoff stocks. We didn't do any of that after the national championship. Maybe that's what'll happen. Yes, getting back on a normal schedule. We'll see. This has been Tuesday on the Podcast Daily, though. That's Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you later.